Thank you, everyone, for joining my talk about building hands-on content for API education at scale. This will be a story told from an engineering point of view. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the Postman customer education team ships learning like software. I'll tell you a bit about the Postman Academy, why instructor-led still matters, and how we scale it with sandboxes so anyone from any background can practice APIs safely. And by the end of this presentation, you'll have a better understanding of why I like to say that we don't just publish content, we deploy it. Brian did an awesome job at introducing me, but since it's a slide here, I'm going to also tell you a little bit about myself. I'm currently a customer education engineer, and yes, I too had no idea what that was in the beginning, nor what I was getting myself into. It turns out it's everything everywhere all at once. I'm kidding. I used to be in developer advocacy where I was focused on one product alone and integrating that product into different software ecosystems. That was a complex job, but it had a reasonably clear-ish roadmap. I've used Postman for 7, 8 years now, but only after joining the company, I started to understand how large the platform actually is. So now I'm back in software development and infrastructure, and I need to circle back to this myth that developers are lazy and they don't read the documentation and so on. I mean, yes, we are lazy. Well, okay, I can speak for myself, but we also have a limited amount of time to make right decisions. So we need to find the right documentation. And the reality is that the source of truth is most of the time the official documentation of products. And that one is often very verbose and it will give you a rigid happy path of using the product. Then you're looking for either hacks, workarounds, user experience. Do you remember Stack Overflow? I don't know if people still use that, but that's where everybody was sharing their workarounds for different things. So you end up wanting to try the product yourself, and all of that can be very time consuming. So like I said, developers are not lazy, they're just overwhelmed with information. I think I noticed that somebody is doing a talk or a panel about funneling good content into LLMs so that users can consume high quality content through that. And I'm going to focus on a bit more of a human approach that is still relevant even in the age of AI. So I digress, but getting overwhelmed can happen to anybody, not just developers. The whole mission of Postman was to simplify how we interact with APIs and to make them accessible to a lot of other roles in the software world, because it's not just engineers or developers that build software. So, for example, there are many other roles, and these are just some of that I can think about or people that I have interacted with in my career. But I'm sure there are companies out there that have specialized subdivisions and are covering a broad array ranging from highly technical to non-technical roles. And all of these people work with APIs and need to comfortably and confidently do so. This is why there is a Postman Academy. And I like to reference the statement on the conference homepage that says something along the lines of content is rarely a topic we talk about from a developer's perspective, even though it is a critical aspect to most of what we build. And this is why I want to bring up the whole team, my whole team of customer education at Postman, because they actually build the content. Since I'm not building the content myself anymore these days, I'm going to talk more about how I support this effort from an engineering perspective and how it all ties together beautifully to create a great learning experience and leverage all this great quality work that most of my colleagues are doing. And just like with a lot of great things in life, it takes a village to build such an ambitious project. And honestly, I had no idea how much work goes into such a thing and how many people add value to it. Obviously, you have the trainers that go out there and face the public when they're teaching about the product. But there are also architects, education specialists, engineers. Well, I'm the official engineer, but the trainers are also engineers. There's advocates, content developers, designers, marketing specialists, copyrights, program specialists. And if I'm forgetting any role, I hope they can forgive me, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. And this sort of effort unlocks a wide range of possibilities. The Postman Academy blends workshops, self-study, um, self-study tracks, and hands-on challenges. Learners run real requests and get instant feedback. So these badges and completions are not just watched, something to get at the end of a video session. They are also earned. So we built this whole system in-house on a learning management system, on AWS services, and of course, Postman. So I started off by mentioning instructor-led workshops. And I think we also need to answer this question of why is it still relevant and why does it matter? So when I first joined the team, I went through one of the trainings just to get acclimated and figure out the ecosystem. And when that was over, we were exchanging opinions and experiences from a trainer's point of view and also from a student's perspective. And one of my colleagues, the colleague who was actually the trainer for that course, said something like instructor-led workshops are like going to school or university. Self-study is like having a library card. They're both valid options. They both work, but one gives you a path and a place to ask questions. And I thought that was a pretty powerful and accurate statement because live sessions create a guided path to unblock people quickly via Q&A and peer discussion. So while we support both types of learning, self-study and instructor-guided study, the latter one is where complex ideas click faster. So now the question is, how do we scale the guided experience and go beyond just plain workshops? And this is where the Sandbox project comes into play. And to give you a little context, this project was started before I joined the team, actually a few years ago. And it was started by my manager and the other trainers who, whenever they had some downtime from actually teaching, they were building the foundation of this project. So when I joined, I had to meet with everyone and get up to speed and figure out all the small components. I'm sure there's still some secret corner of this ecosystem because it's very complex, as I mentioned before. Um, and it will creep up on me at some point. So while being here for 6 months feel more like a year, I still feel like I'm drinking from the fire hose. Maybe the pressure of the fire hose is um, smaller, but it still feels like an abundance of information. And we've heard this word before, sandbox, right? And especially if you're in the business of building software, and that can mean different things for different people, or it means different things for different companies, depending on the context, obviously. But in a nutshell, at Postman, a sandbox is a temporary, isolated team account, emphasis on the team, that is preloaded with workspaces, collections, environments, and demo data that you can run real requests against. And you can also test without having to touch any production environment. So you have a time boxed team that you can spin up on demand with scoped credentials and seeded workspaces that you can use to make requests against. So you have a Sandbox API that you're working with. And this is where the validators come in and they check on your work, they give you hints, and your progress gets synced back to the course. We'll see that in a moment in some explanatory diagrams. But before getting to those diagrams, I just wanted to mention some of the goals that were set to be achieved with this project. Well, the combination of sandboxes and instructor-led trainings. So there was a desire to have one click or a few clicks actually pre-configured teams with seeded data. They were supposed to be, and they are actually, safe, resettable environments for training and demos. And I mentioned demos because this doesn't have to be limited necessarily to courses. Anybody can pick up a sandbox. If you're a solution architect, for example, you go in a meeting with a client, you want to do a demo, but you also want it to be interactive. You can invite them to participate. We also aimed for reusability across internal and external use cases. So it doesn't have to be limited to just internal trainings or just to trainings necessarily. You can also hand them over to partners. If you have a champion inside of a company, they can also use sandboxes. We also aim to have instant automated feedback with the validators, so you don't have to think about why certain things don't work, go around looking for logs. This, if you're a first-time user especially, this is very helpful. And of course, we also wanted to have versioned reproducible scenarios and data for different types of users. You can be in finance, banking, healthcare. This can be adjusted to your needs or your application's needs. So that was a lot of talk. Let's have a look at the tools that we're using. I'll show you some diagrams. We'll identify some major components that we're building. We'll peek under the hood at the AWS services, and we'll also talk a bit about how we dog food Postman while we built this project. So this is a bird's eye view of our components. I like to say that there are three layers. There's the content that is powered by the learning management system. You have it on the left side. And for this, my team chose SkillJar. I wasn't always familiar with LMSs, so it doesn't matter much to me which one they choose. So SkillJar is pretty awesome because it gives you a platform where you can run courses, lessons, you can handle enrollment, track progression of the learners. You can do analytics. It also offers you an API that you can use. It also supports embedding external apps or content inside a lesson. So there are two components to this. There's a front-end component and an API component. The front end is the part where the user actually gets to participate in courses. There's also, for a lack of better naming, I like to call it the processing and validation part, which is this middle academy component. This is where a lot of the heavy lifting is happening, and that's where us engineers are doing most of our work. And of course, there is the third layer, which is the Postman platform that all of our services rely on. It's basically as any other software. It exposes some endpoints, and we communicate with it through that. Internally, all these features such as workspace, environment, collections, they have individual engineering teams. So obviously they will also have individual APIs that you can leverage to create sandboxes, for example, or to even interact with these components. So if we take a step back, I just wanted to make it very obvious with this slide that this is the part where the user actually gets to log into the course and see the slides, do the challenges, and everything that is associated with that. Obviously, I put a big AWS logo here. All of this is running on AWS services, and this is our internal API. And to put all of these pieces into compartments, I guess, you can say that the skill jar part is where the content lives. And that's where the content responsible people on my team are deploying their content, basically, for courses, for self-study tracks, for everything that is necessary. And this is where we work, and this is what we heavily rely on to provision these environments, and also have different instructions to be done with these environments. I will show you that in a few slides. So a little bit about dog fooding our product. Postman isn't just a curl wrapper. I know it gets that reputation, but we use it to model contracts as collections. We use mocks to iterate, and tests to catch breaking changes in the API. You can see it in the diagram. Everything that is an API and requires interaction between services are labeled with the Postman logo. And dog fooding makes us the front line of feature edges, and it also keeps trainers tightly in the loop when it comes to new features that they need to talk about, or some breaking changes that they need to be aware of. So for example, this is how, on the right side, this is how we define our contracts, because for example, for the orchestration, we'll have a front-end component, a back-end component, and we need to define these endpoints and have examples and mocks so that front-end and back-end can develop in parallel. So this is a zoomed-in look at where we operate, or from an engineering perspective. There are three components. If we go back to this purple layer, you can see that there's the learner enrollment and class management. There's the sandbox manager and orchestration service, and the testing and simulation service. So the first part, the enrollment and class management, happens between the admin dashboard. Currently, it exists as a monolith, where we're also working on breaking that down into two containers. There'll be a front end and a back end component. But the user, the admin user, says, I want to create a workshop. Fine. You define it here. You define the learning path. For example, you want to create a workshop for the course Postman 101. It will be registered into the database. We use RDS, and it also gets synced up with SkillJar that keeps track of everything course related. So it links the workshop to the content and the learners that are enrolled into the workshop. That's a simple workflow. And then there's the Sandbox Manager and Orchestrator workflow, which focuses on sandbox creation with everything that needs to be provisioned. For example, what's the plan that is going to be used in the sandbox, features, any preceded data, the numbers of licenses or accounts that need to be attached to the sandbox. And it goes, I numbered it on the diagram. It goes through the same path. The admin just says, I want to create a sandbox. That one will, there will be a JSON, basically a message that is sent to the Sandbox Manager API, goes into a queue, gets picked up by a Lambda function, which triggers a suite of lambdas that are part of a step functions service, and each one is responsible for a different task. This might be slightly out of order because applying a template needs to happen before you create bots and learners. And each one of these is calling an endpoint on the Postman API platform. And then each one brings back some information which needs to be updated in the database. So it will just spit out another JSON that gets processed and added to the database. And that's where we store all our information related to these sandboxes. And the last part, which is the testing, well, the validation and simulation service, this one happens right here. It functions in as a separate service, and it talks both to Skilljar and the Postman API. So I want to show you a little bit how it looks from the perspective of the content consumer. This is the dashboard where you log in as the user, you go to your course that you're enrolled in, and then you have your modules that you can explore. I mean, actually, the trainer will explore it with you in the beginning, but then you have to solve challenges based on that. And for example, in this module, you can see everything that needs to be done. You need to go over slides. I mean, it's optional in this case. The trainer will go through them with the whole class, but if you need to reference them a little later, then you have that option. Then you have the challenges. The first one is obviously getting your login credentials. So you need to log in into two places. You'll have the course platform and the Postman platform where you basically do all of these challenges. So this is what it looks like when you log into Postman separately. This is your average Postman dashboard. I think everybody is familiar with this. And once you log in as a student, you have these pre-configured environments where you have, for example, a collection that you need to call different APIs. You can, one of the challenges is that you should invite a collaborator. So in this example, one of the instructions is to invite Postmanaut. And Po is a bot. This one simulates another person's action on your team. So once Po is added to the team, we can ask him to create a new collection. So it says tag Po in a comment and ask him to help you set the product catalog collection. So first you go and invite Po. It's just as you would invite any other collaborator to your workspace. And I need to go back to the initial slide where you tag him and you say, hey, help me set up this collection. And then you take the workspace ID and you start the simulation. And like I said, Po will simulate the action of another colleague. So he will end up creating a collection in your workspace. And you can see that ran successfully. I didn't want to do this as a live demo because sometimes we might lose access or get logged out of this space. So I think it's safer this way. So you can see we started off with one collection here, and we have two now. So Po has successfully created another collection in our workspace. So once all the instructions have been completed, we can verify that our workspace looks as expected. So that means it has all the necessary collections in it, the right environment variables, the correct endpoints have been called. So this is just a simple example, but of course, these validations extend to other more complex features. It doesn't have to be just adding a colleague and forking a collection or creating a new collection. there are scenarios in other modules where you have to actually write tests for these collections, and that is a lot more rigorous. So now it's time to flip it a bit, and this is what it looks like from a sandbox admin perspective. Yes, this is internal tooling, and it's still work in progress because right now we have a very simple dashboard. This will be the fancy dashboard. It still has fake names, obviously, but this is where anybody can log in and create their workshop and attach sandboxes, and these will connect to the courses in SkillJar. And I think I've covered most of the important things, or how things work. Before we end this, I would also like to bring up some of the challenges that we face, because although it can look smooth, it hasn't always been without challenges. So this is not a perfect project or product like any other software product. Occasionally, we have to do manual fixes. There can be also content drift. Sometimes we might have to reach into the database or into SkillJar, for example, to update certain values. It has happened in the past that a student was not attached to the correct course, so you just need to go in there and fix that manually. There's also a matter of staying current with product rollouts. New features can impact validators or the learner flow. And I think just recently, I was in a meeting with our trainers where they were discussing how to handle a new feature update, whether to address the new or the old interface, considering that some students might go back home to their own installed, own and old installed version of Postman, and they might not see the new feature. Which would probably not make them happy. So in the end, they decided to address the change, but they had the side-by-side screenshots of both the interfaces so that users don't get confused. There's always new requirements, and well, new and changing requirements, and they range from must-haves to nice to have and everything in between, and that can be challenging because we have to support a broad array of users now. This brings me to the fourth point. We want to enable and customize sandboxes for, like I said, different types of users, such as training partners, sales engineers, solution architects, and anyone who needs to do a demo, basically. These can be extended not only to other companies or to students, but also for internal purposes. And I think we're almost at time, and I hope I didn't confuse you too much with a pretty complex topic, but I think I will wrap it up now. I hope this gave you some insight on how we handle content at Postman. And with that, this is the end of my presentation. And thank you for watching. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Thanks, Anka. That was great. I think, for me, my initial reaction was I had a couple of thoughts. First of all, you may not have been able to catch it earlier, but Kian from Cloudflare was on talking about how they handle things at Cloudflare, and it was mostly from a documentation, like thinking of, we tend to think content and like I think at least my brain always is like long form text, right? And
Yeah.
it's not always long form text. Like a lot of times content is just things being pulled from APIs, and in your case you've got like, learning management system and internal APIs and all this kind of stuff kind of meshing together into a more complex piece of like content that's not just a big long form piece of written content. It's interactive and it has like, and it has instructor-led portions and all kinds of things like that. So I'm like kind of this was a good like kind of opposite almost of like that was purely how do we convert text content, and this is like how do we build something that's both like instructor-led and interactive.
Yeah, we need to
from
automate
content.
everything.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's just goes to show you like how many different pieces would have to go into that. I really hadn't like, put my head around, you know, well, you and I know because like we worked together. We talked about having an academy and things like that, and I've always like been like, okay, that's actually a really big project. And
Yes,
now it's like,
exactly.
yeah, it really is a really big project. So,
Yeah, yeah, I was putting together this presentation and I was like, I can't believe we tried to build an academy with three people.
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and if you that was when I came in, I remember being like, "Oh, yeah, no, Academy seems like a big thing." So, yeah, maybe we put that off for later. And watching your presentation, I'm like, "Oh, thank God, we put that off for later. I don't think we're ready to handle this." But I was curious, like, are these? I haven't done the Postman Academy things. Like you said, there's an instructor-led portion. Is this like live instructor-led or is it like some kind of
Yes,
video instructor? No,
yes, you can
live
do
instructor.
in-person workshops. Depending if your company can arrange that, a trainer can come to your place and you can do it for the whole team, or you can register for regular online workshops.
Okay, so in either case, the online workshop is still live instructor-led.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and so are any of these are any of these designed to be like just learn on your own time kind of thing, or is it really just purely all instructor-led?
There's a separate section for that.
Okay. And it's
I
run
guess
by the
some of
same
the
system though?
content is reused. Um,
Okay.
but like I said, there is value to having instructors come in and help
Yeah.
you solve problems.
No, absolutely. I was just curious, like, if does the same system run both sets of things,
Yes.
or is it
Yeah.
just, oh, wow, okay. And so like the instructor goes in and this is them creating like the curriculum for this course, and they create all the different challenge pieces that go along with whatever curriculum they've designed, kind of thing.
Pretty
Correct?
much. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's, I mean, it's really impressive what you all have built. So most of all the content pieces really like beyond that they're interacting with, like the UI, even though it's built upon SkillJar, is actually
Yes.
pulling info from internal APIs that it's able to display there at like or
My understanding of SkillJar is that you just attach your content to it and it manages it manages that based on, I guess, tags or different fields. Because, for example, when you create a workshop, you have a learning path and a group, and you enroll students into the group, and that's how it knows what goes with what.
right. Okay. We did have a couple questions I want to get to from the audience as well. Um, So Sarah asks, do you have to train your instructors on your interactive tools? Is that a whole extra level of work that things that you have to work on?
Um, we we try to abstract um, the information that they need because a lot of the times um, wait, so we have trainers that have started the project and they know exactly what's under the hood and what has been built. But we also have the new trainers that probably don't need to go in there and get their hands dirty. So for them, we kind of abstract that information and we have like a playbook that they can run their trainings on. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Or
okay.
should
I think I
I
did things.
elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah, no, actually elaborate on a little bit more because I'm curious like how that works, the playbook piece
So,
of this.
yeah, so like I mentioned, I can just tell you what happened. Initially, there were three instructors and my manager, and they were just building these applications and the challenges and everything. But then a new trainer joined, and he's not actively building anything because there's no need at this point to for him to build anything. Also, I don't think he has a developer background. He has a different type of background. So he just needs to know the information, know the product very well, There can also be hiccups, like there's an error that you're not familiar with. So that's where the playbook kind of comes in hand, where all the other trainers put in this information and they say, look, if you run into this, this is what you need to do. Um, but obviously it takes a lot of learning of the product itself,
Right.
not necessarily the system.
Okay. That makes sense. So, I mean, is it something that you can actually take this whole system and even perhaps like, oh, we don't have trainers in whatever country, like we could easily just spin up somebody even externally who could teach these classes because the curriculum's all set in the system and the challenges are all set, so like it's relatively easy to onboard
Exactly.
external, yeah, trainers. Okay.
That's one of our goals to enable external trainers to do this for their peers as well.
Yeah, I could see that being like this would be like a great tool, for instance, if you get like a large I know like at companies I've been at in the past where like you sign a large enterprise and getting onboarding the developers is a big challenge. Like, even when I was at Launch Darkly, like we would get all these like developers signed up for Launch Darkly and but then didn't use the tool because they weren't really that familiar. But this would be a great way to like, okay, onboard a new customer, get them into these hands-on trainings. Um, really
Yeah,
gets them,
I think that's the case everywhere where you buy a bunch of licenses and not everybody gets familiar with the product enough. And yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's true. I brought up Launch Darkly only because that was a recent yes, but it's true it's been true everywhere. Companies buy a ton of licenses and like for some people it's really easy and other people it's hard. I think it's amazing that you guys have built this system that actually, has the full hands-on training because usually I've seen them and it's like purely like on your own time kind of thing and or like they're not really like full use of the product. It's some kind of simulated experience that's in the browser that's not, like it's like maybe a slice of it that's semi like on Rails, I'd say, where it's guided through. But this feels like everything you're actually using the real product. You're not using like some simulated version of the product.
exactly. These are real accounts and real licenses.
Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, it looks really cool. Um, all right. So looks like there was also quite a bit of discussion funny enough, about your mention of Stack Overflow being, does anybody use that anymore? I I was like, yeah, it is kind of dying. So it brought up a lot of different thoughts about like what happens when those kind of questions. I think you got into inadvertently brought up a talk of like what happens when this written, you know, content that we train off of is gone. Um, so
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I think it also brought up feelings because it was a quintessential part of our careers, right? At least the ones who are slightly older.
yeah. I mean, I think it's still relevant because people still find it all the time in search. It's the first thing that comes
Yeah,
up for a lot of things. But I did want to get Sarah had one more follow-up question, and I want to make sure I get to it as we're running out of time.
sure.
So she says, you mentioned it might not have been wise to start with three people. Are there particular skills, resources that you wished you had when you started that you didn't? Did anything surprise you? And just to kind of clarify for Sarah, the reference was Anka and I used to work together, and we had three people team, and the plan was to put together an academy. And well, that was, that's probably was overly ambitious for me. But yeah, so what would you say like has now that you've been hands-on doing building an academy, like what are the things you learned that like you didn't know back then even looking at it?
Well, just to be clear, I didn't build it from scratch myself.
Right.
I'm currently kind of redoing it from scratch because, like I said, there's a need for new features and new scenarios that need to be supported. But I also get a lot of help from some of the trainers because they know the old stuff and they can help me with that. So I'm not really alone. Um, I that's actually one of those questions where you need to think a little bit, but yeah, you just need to run fast and adapt and figure things out as you go along. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not an easy question. I mean, it's like yeah, I
I
think
mean, now that I mean, I'm no longer in the eye of the storm. I made it through. I I don't know how to answer that right now.
that's fair. Totally fair. Yeah. Okay. So Anka, this was awesome. It was great seeing you again. And
Likewise.
love the talk, love learning about the system you're building, and I think it seems really impressive. I definitely it honestly it makes me want to go learn some Postman. So thank you. So
Well, and
we are
if anybody who's watching wants to get some training for their company or yeah, be sure to reach out. Yeah, that's
okay.
it.
All right, sounds good.